I've decided my brief sunbreak stop, not sunbreak, sun cream stop, to apply sun cream here in the Ina Valley, is a good chance to talk about how I'm filming my journey. And so at the moment I'm using an iPhone iMax Pro 13, but for the footage from the bike I'm mostly shooting that on a GoPro, and if we have a look at it mounted on the front, I'm just going to flip the camera around so you can see it a bit better. So it did take me a fair bit of experimentation to come up with a setup I was happy with. The challenge is, of course, it needs to be safe. So holding a camera one-handed as you cycle along isn't great. It needs to be quite secure. So I mean, I've hit up to 60 kilometers an hour going downhill. So you don't want the camera falling off and getting smashed. And also it has to have a good angle of view, and that's quite hard. Because most of the obvious straight points aren't going to give you that much looking straight forward. So the solution I came up with was in fact to fit an extension onto my mobile phone holder, which is this. So this is designed to dampen the vibrations coming up into the phone anyway, as well as holding it really securely. It's been fine so far. And then I've attached this extension piece to that, and then it's secured at the top and the bottom with your standard GoPro screws. And so far that's held up now for several hundred kilometers, apart from when I took the GoPro out and failed to tighten the screw once, and that screw fell out. But otherwise that's where my footage is coming from. It works pretty well on the bike, and also it doesn't really obscure my view. It also has the advantage that if you put the bike up, it's a relatively high mount, you know, so it's not quite head level, but it's giving me a similar point of view that a chest mount would. But the chest mount, of course, you can see your arms all the time as well. I experimented with chest mounts last year. They're good, but the point of view they give you includes your actual arms, so you may or may not want that included. And then, of course, a head mount. But a head mount is actually quite uncomfortable to wear for long periods of time. It's kind of like for very short clips, it's quite effective because, of course, you can also look at things to the side, like noisy sheep. But anyway, hope that's useful. All right, so I decided you couldn't see everything clearly on the bike, so I disassembled the various components. So first off, this is the phone mount, which is designed so there's quite a bit of give in it. And the idea of that is your phone can get damaged by being bumped as you're going over rough surfaces constantly, and that dampens that down a bit. And then on the phone mount, there is this thing here, which is, I presume it's designed for a GoPro mount. So you can mount the GoPro, which is this, directly on the phone. But that tends to give it too low an angle to the road. So after looking around online, I found these extension pieces, which connect at one end to the GoPro mount, and at the other end they have their own GoPro mount, which actually has a screw receiver in it. So that gives you a bit of a firmer connection than the usual one. So when I lost the screw I referred to in Kerry, and therefore couldn't film for a day, that was this part. What had happened is I had taken the GoPro off, brought it into a pub with me and charged it, and I hadn't really bothered checking that I'd secured the screw properly, so I suspect it was loose like this and it just bounced out as I was cycling off down the road. Anyway, so there's the parts. This is the GoPro. It's a GoPro 10. Which is, I think, the first or maybe the second model that they've really strong image stabilization built in. So that's why when you see the videos, they look relatively smooth, even though this at the end of the pole is getting bounced around like crazy, as you might imagine. The one problem, and it's kind of inevitable with the small size of the camera, is the battery life is very short. So I have 2 additional batteries. Shooting video, you get about an hour from each battery, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on conditions. When I do the time-lapse shots, that seems to give me something more in the range of 80 to 90 minutes, so a little bit longer. So in fact, the 3 batteries on time lapse give me pretty much an entire cycle. I mean, that 100-kilometer loop cycle I did of Connemara, I used 3. Now I skipped the first 12 kilometers, I think, and it cut out before the end. So it's probably good for maybe 80 kilometers, and if you're lucky, maybe as high as 90. So that works fairly well. And what else can I tell you about this setup? On the road, yeah, so the other thing with the GoPro is recharging the batteries. The camera can do that on the road. You just pop open the compartment that holds the batteries, the SD card, and there is a USB-C charger there, which means you need to have a USB-C charging cable. And that was the other thing I was missing. I didn't have a USB charging cable that could connect to my power bank at the one end and to this on the other end. I had to find a mains plug to plug it in. So all the sort of things that you kind of need to have sorted out before you go. And to a large extent, you only really realize a lot of these issues once you're actually testing. So, yep, that's the camera setup. For the occasional side of the road shots of me cycling by, I generally put my phone on this very small, lightweight tripod selfie stick. It does extend up, but the higher extensions are not stable if there's wind, and so unless you want your camera to fall on the ground, you probably don't want that. It will do either orientation, and of course you can also use it as a selfie stick, and it's got a Bluetooth controller built in as well, although often I'll be using my watch to control the camera angle. And then the last thing I was doing some of was hand holding the GoPro as I cycled, and then holding it up and filming it. The risk with that is something drastic might happen in that you need to drop it. So I've realized that a good idea would be to simply add a standard wrist strap to it when I'm doing that. So you can just loop that through here. I mean, on the one hand, I don't recommend this because you've obviously a lot less control of the bike, but it does enable you to get shots that include the background and you talking, which in some cases can add a fair bit, like the one I did of Tyrone House, which was that burnt out house that was on the road to Oranmore. I wonder about, look at this place. So anyway, that's the various bits of camera gear. As before, this mounts on the handlebars. It holds my phone, so I use it to navigate from, and then this top spike holds the GoPro and that films it. And I can either set it so it's looking at me and filming me in a little bit of the background, or looking forward. I have this longer connector, and I'm actually quite tempted to bring this one to Scotland because I think that'll give me a better angle. When I got back and I looked a lot at the footage from Kerry, a lot of the time the camera was not able to see what I was seeing because there were hedges, and it wasn't quite able to see over the top of the hedges, but it wasn't far off the top of the hedges. It's possible that the extra few centimetres here, that's probably about 6 centimetres, would get you over the top of the hedge and give you a better shot. So I might experiment with that over the next couple of days.